इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर हो। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। दूर अज्ञान के हो अंधेरे, तू हमें ज्ञान की रोशनी दे। हर बुराई से बचते रहे हम, जितनी भी दे भली जिंदगी दे। बेरा होना किसी का किसी से, भावना मन में बदले की होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, से कमजोर होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। हम न सोचे हमें क्या मिला है, हम ये सोचे किया क्या है अर्पण। भूल खुशियों के बाते सभी को, सबका जीवन ही बन जाए मधुबन। अपनी करुणा का जल तू बहा के, कर दे पावन हर एक मन का कोना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें देना दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे, हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल हो ना, इतनी शक्ति हमें देन दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। ओम असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गमय। पूर्णमदा पूर्णमिदं पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः, भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः, स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसत्सूभिः यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः, स्वस्ति न पूषा तार्क्ष्यनेमिः, स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव, त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव, त्वमेव विद्यात् द्रविणं त्वमेव, त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृतेर्स्वभावात्। करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि, नारायणायेति समर्पयामि, नारायणायेति समर्पयामि। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम्, उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ
Welcome to Satsang. Here we are back on the sacred and beautiful banks of Mother Ganga at this beautiful, beautiful time of sunset. Welcome to our Satsang. So touched and grateful to be able to connect with all of you. Ideally would be to have you all sitting here together, as together we sit on the banks of Ganga, as together we perform the divine arti, and then after the arti, as together we gather in satsang. But one of the core pieces of both a spiritual life as well as just a grounded, peaceful, successful life is the ability to distinguish between the real and the ideal. So in an ideal world, you'd all be here and we'd be gathered together in this beautiful evening that might give us some rain on the banks of Ganga. But in the reality of the situation, you're in so many different cities and countries all over the world. And so we take that reality, we hold the ideal, holding that vision, holding that intention, knowing that soon it will manifest, knowing that soon we will be together. But in this exact moment, in this exact intersection of time and space, you're in your cities, in your countries around the world. And so in that reality, we use this beautiful gift of technology. The cameras, the wires, the internet in the air, flowing somehow magically, connecting us through these wires. And I feel so deeply grateful for that at this time of the pandemic, at this time of being physically separate, we actually have this ability through technology to connect. And today, of course, also is International Friendship Day. And so it's a beautiful day to remember not only the beautiful gift of celebration of friends, but also the gift of the ability to connect in the heart, in the spirit, in the energy, even when we can't be physically together, and to make friends across rivers, across oceans, across continents, that our friends aren't only those we go out for tea and coffee and meals with, or share birthdays or successes or failures with, but our friends are all those we're connected to. And during this time of the pandemic, we've been forced actually into something very beautiful, which is recognizing how we can be connected even when we're not physically present with each other. So on this beautiful International Friendship Day, welcome. And I'm so grateful to be able to sit with you all in satsang.
It is said that you have to do intense practice to become Jivan Mukta. But it is also mentioned many times in our scriptures that going to places like Kashi and Badrinath, or fasting on Mahashivratri, or merely putting one's ashes in Ganga can liberate one's soul and give moksha. Is it that easy?
Great. So, moksha, freedom, is in the mind, meaning the bondage is not the body. We have this illusion that somehow when I die, I will attain moksha. And of course, we speak about moksha as a spiritual euphemism for death. What happened? Well, mokshmila means euphemistically, spiritually, this person has died. But tragically, there really isn't any guarantee whatsoever that dropping the body gives you moksha. In fact, the whole cycle of birth and death, of reincarnation, of karma, is rooted in the truth that just because you die doesn't mean you attain moksha. If death led to moksha, if death led to liberation, there would be no reincarnation. There would be no karma that stayed with us from one life to another life. The whole premise of the science of karma, of reincarnation, is the body is not the problem. Because until you attain freedom in the mind, every time you drop the body, you just get another one. It's like being in school. If you haven't learned what you need to learn in 5th grade, well, at the end of summer, you're in 5th grade again. You only get to go on to 6th grade when the teachers deem that you've learned everything you need to learn in 5th grade. So in the same way, when we die, when we leave our bodies, we only attain moksha if we actually had attained it, if we had learned it in life. So all of the baths in holy rivers, the prayers, the pujas, those are meant not to somehow magic wand away lifetimes of karma, but they are meant to alchemically transform our minds. Because as Puja Swamiji always reminds us, God is very gracious. God is very forgiving. Puja Swamiji always says, God never opens your old files. If you go to God, surrender, and allow yourself to be transformed. So if through the bath, through the puja, through the prayers, my mind is transformed such that all of the ignorance that I did, all of the mistakes in the past, that ignorance is gone, then yes, I've attained moksha. I've attained freedom. Because my mind has been transformed. But if you come out of Ganga and you are filled with the same ignorance that you had when you went in, and so you come out and you act in the same way that you acted when you went in, that bath doesn't give you moksha. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's a transformation of the mind. And this is why they've always said that to attain Jiva Mukti is difficult. Only because to deal with the mind, as we know, is difficult. And that is where our spiritual practice is so essential. The meditation, the prayers, the introspection, to understand, what am I holding on to? What is it that is keeping me from being free in my mind? My ego, my attachment, my grudges, my identities. All of that stuff that I'm holding on to that keeps me from being free. If when I bathe in Ganga, if when I perform puja, I can let that go, then yeah, I will be free. But the key is the mind. It's a beautiful teaching that I always recite that says, Man eva manushyanam kadanam bandha mokshayo. And it's so simple, I love it. It's like the sutra. And it means the mind is the key. Whether you will live in bondage or freedom, it's all in the mind. So this is why we need to start working with our minds today, now, right now.
Why is there a separation between males and females in Hinduism, even for children? What is the intention? And doesn't it create boundaries instead of union?
A lot of the orthodox religious traditions in the world have separations of men and women. I was raised in a Jewish family. My mom was raised in an Orthodox Jewish family. And when she was young and they would go to synagogue, to Orthodox synagogue, not only were the women separate, but there was actually a curtain that the women sat behind. Now we know that that also exists in so many other religions in different ways. So it's not only Hinduism that in its orthodoxy, in its traditional way, separates. The reason behind this in theory is that when, especially young, boys and girls, men and women, interact at the time of their lives when biological chemicals and hormones are coursing through their bodies, naturally, there's attraction. And where there is attraction, there is distraction. This is the traditional religious viewpoint. If you go to temple, to synagogue, to church, to mosque, and instead of listening to what the spiritual leader is speaking, you're looking at the cute boy in the row in front of you, or you're looking at the cute girl sitting next to you. Naturally, your mind is distracted, and you're not able to properly pray, to focus, to listen, to engage in the spiritual and religious practices. So that's where the tradition of separation comes, that when we go to our religious places, we should be only immersed in prayer, only immersed in connection to God. Not thinking about, oh, he's cute. Oh, she's cute. Oh, I wonder if he has a boyfriend. Oh, I wonder if she's married. I wonder if I should ask them out for coffee afterwards. And that's, of course, just the cute, innocuous stuff. We know that our minds go far beyond the cute, innocuous way of thinking about each other. And so in houses of prayer, in houses of worship, in houses of God, traditionally it has been seen by so many religions that it's just better to minimize distractions, to minimize temptations. What has happened, though, is that of course has bubbled out of houses of worship and into a lot of our society. Now again, in the purity of the intention, it just has to do with removing temptation. If you don't put young men and women together, you don't have temptation. Now, of course, we know in any case that isn't always true, because we know that temptation is not always heterosexual anyway. So, of course, the whole premise assumes that young boys will only be attracted to young girls, that girls will only be attracted to boys, which of course we know anyway isn't true. But what we also know is that the more you keep something away, actually the more our attraction toward it builds. When something is seen as forbidden, something that you're kept away from, we actually, just human nature, there's much more of the interest in it. So it doesn't, sociologically and civilizationally, it doesn't really work so well, but that's the premise behind it. And so it's a valid premise, it's a good premise, it's a well-intentioned premise, but it's something that we need as societies to look back and to say, all right, well, so this didn't work so well. Maybe we should rethink it. Now, the only point to mention here is in terms of schools, educational places. We do know, there have been studies done, that in all boys or all girls educational institutions, the boys and the girls do tend to actually focus more on their studies than they do in co-ed institutions, which should be very obvious to everyone. And so it's not always bad. It's not always something that we need to say every single institution, every single thing, every event should be co-ed. Obviously, some places should not be. Saunas, steam rooms, places obviously that people are in like that, it's nice to have them segregated. Run-of-the-mill places in our societies shouldn't be segregated. Somewhere in between, depending on what our ultimate highest goal is. As societies, as educational institutions, as religious institutions. We have to have the courage and the humility to actually scientifically look at this and to ask ourselves, what is working? Is the segregation achieving what we were hoping? Or is it just breeding more temptation? And this is where, like everything has to have innovations. A lot of our religious and societal norms, we have to have the courage to have innovations in them, to look and to say, does this work? And where it doesn't, to stop, to say, all right, let's try something new. So it's not so much about separation. Don't worry about that so much. It's It's much more about a well-intentioned, but not quite so successful way of properly managing people's prayers, their education, and their obedience to a set of norms in society. But you're right, it doesn't work so well all the time.
This is a question from Renu G, which is very personal to her, and she's watching. I really want to know in detail what the significance is of the mundan that is done in Indian culture. Please,
great.
can you explain it? They obviously want to do it,
Yes,
but that
of
she
course.
wants to make sure
Yes.
she knows why.
So, in our Hindu tradition, we have what are called sanskaras, and they are the rites of passage throughout our lives. And one of the core sanskaras is the mundan ceremony, in which, depending on different traditions, it's done sometimes in the first year, sometimes in the second year, sometimes in the third year of life. Some traditions shave the full head. Some traditions leave the sacred patch of hair in the back, which is seen as sort of an antenna to God. Different traditions have different specific ways of doing it, but the theory and the teaching behind it is that in order to really break the chain with the past lives, we shave the head. That in order to really embark fully in freedom in this life, the head is shaved. That there is some way in which the hair ties us back to past lives. Now, again, along with our sanskaras, along with so many different rites and rituals, and even different holidays, different parts of India, different lineages have a little bit of different spiritual significance to it. Really, what is most important is it's not so much about the hair. Sanskaras, we know, mean impressions. And they are impressions on the psyche. The hair grows back. You can cut it off all you want. It's gonna grow back. And whether we believe that it grows back cleaner and purer, or whether we believe that it just grows back stronger and healthier, either way, what matters most is that these sanskaras that are done with the appropriate Vedic mantras, with the pujas, with the prayers, with all of that holy and sacred energy upon them, that leaves the impression upon the child. And that is actually what's much more important. And so, yes, there are different reasons that we speak about the hair and the first hair being impure. But more important than the actual shaving of the head is the sanskara, the ritual upon that child. And that's why it's not just a matter of, oh, get the kid to a barber and shave the head, but why it's always done with beautiful mantras. We've done so many children's mundan ceremonies here, and it's so beautiful because on the banks of Ganga or in other holy places, not only is the child having this puja done, but the entire psyche of the child is being impacted by the chanting of the mantras, by the prayers, by the pujas, all of that energy. And we know that we're energetic beings. We know that all of the energy in the universe impacts us. Whether it's something as obvious and kind of mundane as a really loud noise, if next to a child's ear you go, the child startles. In fact, it's, part of the standard sort of neurological tests that they do on babies to make sure that everything is functioning properly. If the child doesn't startle, there's something wrong. So, a loud noise, the energy, the sound waves of that clap have an impact on the child. Light, another form of energy. Shine a light in the child's eyes. Again, another part of a neurological test. You're going to get a reaction in the child. All energy impacts us, not only children. But children are particularly sensitive. All of their brain cells, everything is still forming, and the whole being of who they are is still being created. And so all energy impacts them very much. That's why the early years, not just what we say to our children, but the tones of voice we use, the look on our face, the volume, the way we hold them or don't hold them, all of that, it impacts them so deeply. So these sanskaras, these sacred rites and rituals, are another form of very powerful energy upon the child. So whether you decide to leave the patch of hair at the top or you don't leave the patch of hair at the top, whether you do it at 1 year or 2 years, worry more. Think more about creating the most powerful, energetic environment for the child to do it in. That's what's going to leave the most deep and lasting sanskara upon the child. And these are the impressions that stay with us throughout our entire lives.
My mind is not stable during meditation. Which is greater, Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva? Whose Guru Mantra gives moksha? Sometimes I think I should take Lord Shiva Guru Mantra and sometimes Lord Ram. I'm very confused.
As we spoke about earlier, moksha is in the mind. That which is binding me is in my mind. It's my own ignorance. It's my own ego. It's my own attachments. It's my own fears, my own desires, my own separation from myself, from the truth of myself. The key to moksha is to recognize the truth of who I am. That divinity, that fullness, that wholeness, that infinite consciousness, that pure awareness. This is the key. And so it's not about whether to do it with Lord Shiva mantra, Lord Vishnu mantra, the Mother Goddess mantra, Om. I mean, you only gave 2 options, but there's so many different options. It's not about that. It's about how you feel connected to that mantra, how that mantra works in you. That's what matters the most. All of the forms of the divine we know are part of the supreme reality. Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma. They're not separate entities. They're separate powers of the same supreme reality. And so whatever word you use, whatever name you use, what matters most is not the name, but the love that you use it with. Imagine if your child says to you, I don't know if the questioner was male or female, but if your child says to you, let's say you're a man who asked it, if your child calls you dad or daddy or pita or pitaji or papa or just pa, do you care? Do you love the child who says pitaji more than you love the child who says daddy? What matters to you is that the child is saying it with love. That when the child says it, their heart is full of love, that they're calling out to you with love. That's what matters. So whether you're praying, Hey Shankar Bhagwan, Hey Bhagwan Shiv, Om Namah Shivaya. Whether you're praying to Lord Vishnu or any of Lord Vishnu's incarnations, you're praying to Krishna, you're praying to Ram, to any of the incarnations, or are you praying, Hey Ma Durga, Ma Saraswati, Ma Lakshmi, Ganeshji, Jai Hanuman, right? I mean, how many options? We have infinite numbers of options. All that matters is that you pray with love. So find the form, the name that fills you with the most love, that when you're chanting that mantra, you're reciting the name of the beloved. That's the fastest way to the moksha. The real bhakti, real love, real devotion that automatically merges you into oneness in love. Don't worry about the semantics. When you're in the arms of the beloved, whether you say sweetheart, or you say darling, or you say dear, or you say beloved, or you say mera jaan, or you say pyari, or you say whatever other Hindi ways there are of saying beloved, or any language. Doesn't matter. People say all kinds of funny names in love. Oh, my fruit cake. Oh, my cheesecake. Right? I mean, you hear people say all kinds of funny things all the time. But when you know cheesecake means me, you love it. So it's not so much which word or name or mantra. It's the love. If even we, without God's omniscience, omnipotence, are able to understand, to feel love in someone calling us cheesecake, imagine God being able to feel your love, feel your devotion in any name, all the names. So chant the mantras and see which one feels the most like you're approaching your beloved, like you're speaking to the beloved, like you're calling out to the beloved. And then chant that mantra. Chant it with love. Then that's your key. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your night or your day, wherever you are in the world. And join us tomorrow for our Friday evening sunset meditation, or sunrise meditation if you happen to be joining us live from California. So much love to all of you, in your homes, in your cities, all across the world, and waiting for the day when you can all be here with us physically.